The packet on Mason Price's front door looked official enough to stop a heartbeat. Heavy paper, county seal, a red stamp screaming, "Emergency Occupancy Termination." Someone had given his family 72 hours to leave their own house. Across the street, the HOA president stood in a pastel tracksuit, phone lifted, waiting for the collapse. Mason reached for the notice first, his wife reached it second, and in one frozen glance, Avery realized the woman smiling at the curb had just forged papers from the very court where she worked as a judge.
Before Pine Hollow Estates turned into a battlefield, Mason and Avery Price had chosen the neighborhood for the most ordinary reason possible: peace. He managed projects for a small construction firm and spent his weekends restoring antique furniture in the garage. She left home before sunrise, came back after dusk, and guarded her work life with almost military discipline. In the neighborhood, she was simply Avery, quiet, polite, and hard to read. At the courthouse downtown, under her maiden name Bennett, she spent long days on the civil bench. Their brick ranch stayed neat, their lawns stayed trimmed, and their lives barely touched the HOA beyond dues and holiday emails. Then came Diane Mercer. Diane ran Pine Hollow the way some people ran a campaign office. She drifted through the streets in a golf cart, photographed trash bins, measured fences, and treated every blade of grass like a loyalty test. At first, she arrived with welcome baskets and brittle smiles. Soon, she started sending neighborhood alerts about tiny standards issues nobody had noticed until she pointed at them. The real crack appeared when the board pushed a special assessment for a stone entrance sign, new surveillance cameras, and vague administrative printing costs. Mason asked to see the invoices and reserve figures. Diane stopped smiling after that. The first violation landed on a Tuesday morning in a bright orange envelope taped to their mailbox. Diane claimed Mason was running an unauthorized commercial business from the home because a lumber delivery had arrived and a half-finished walnut dresser sat in the garage. The accusation was absurd. The bylaws allowed hobby work so long as there were no employees, storefront signs, or customer traffic, and Mason had none of them. Still, Diane added a weekly fine and posted his address on the HOA portal under Unresolved Compliance Issues. Mason answered with photos, timestamps, and the exact rule she was twisting. The board ignored every page. A week later, the HOA landscapers crossed the survey line and hacked down 6 hydrangeas along the side yard. Avery had planted them the spring after her mother died, spacing each bush by hand and nursing them through a brutal summer. Diane called them an obstruction to community visibility, even though they stood entirely on private property, several feet inside the pins Mason had already marked. The men left shredded stems, churned mud, and an invoice charging the prices for corrective trimming. That was the moment it stopped feeling petty and started feeling targeted. Mason saw the pattern. Diane was not enforcing rules, she was testing how much damage she could do before someone made her stop. Avery, calm and precise, even with dirt still on her shoes, told him to document everything. So he did. The pressure came in waves after that. One day it was a fine because their trash bin had remained visible for 22 minutes after pickup. Another day it was a warning over chalk drawings on the driveway left by the neighbor's 8-year-old during a birthday party. Their pool access cards stopped working, even though dues were current. A fluorescent towing sticker appeared on Mason's pickup despite the parking permit hanging in plain view. Someone shut off the irrigation valve to their front strip, and when the grass browned in the summer heat, Diane cited them for dead landscaping. Mason installed exterior cameras and started saving every email, every envelope, every time-stamped image. The footage showed Diane cutting across their lawn to photograph windows, peering into the backyard through the fence, and once placing a violation notice on their door less than an hour after a storm blew branches across half the neighborhood.
When Mason requested board meeting minutes and vendor contracts, files began disappearing from the HOA portal. When he asked why the new camera project was being awarded to a company owned by Diane's brother-in-law, a certified letter arrived threatening a lien for unpaid penalties that had never been properly approved. Neighbors noticed, but most kept their curtains closed. Pine Hollow had been trained into silence. Mason finally decided he was done absorbing it. He filed a formal records demand, printed the bylaw sections Diane kept violating, and told a handful of fed-up homeowners he was prepared to challenge the board at the annual meeting. That Friday evening, a neighbor texted him a blurry photo through a clubhouse window. Diane stood at the community printer, feeding heavy white paper into the tray beside a stack of court form pages. His address was visible at the top. By dawn on Monday, the answer was taped to his front door. The packet was thicker than any HOA notice, printed on expensive stock and stamped with a county seal meant to terrify on sight. It declared an emergency occupancy termination for repeated nuisance behavior, delinquent assessments, and non-compliance with community governance. It ordered the family to vacate within 72 hours pending sheriff enforcement. A case number sat above a forged clerk's signature. Diane had even slipped copies into the plastic newsletter box at the neighborhood entrance so half the subdivision could see them before breakfast. Mason felt the air leave his chest. This was no longer harassment dressed as bureaucracy. It was a public humiliation campaign built around a criminal lie. Diane was not just trying to fine him into silence anymore. She was trying to erase his credibility before the board vote that night, strip his household of sympathy, and make every neighbor think the prices were being thrown out as deadbeats. Then Avery stepped beside him in slippers and a gray sweatshirt, read the first page, and went absolutely still. She spotted the fraud in seconds. The caption format was wrong. The seal came from an outdated version no longer used by the court. The case number belonged to a landlord file from years earlier. The hearing date fell on a court holiday. Diane had copied the look of justice without understanding how justice actually worked. Mason looked up and saw Diane at the perb again, phone ready, waiting for panic. Avery did not give it to her. She went inside, closed the door, and began making calls Diane would never have seen coming. Avery moved fast and clean. She contacted the court administrator, disclosed the conflict immediately, and forwarded images of every page to the county's Judicial Security Office. Within an hour, a court investigator confirmed the documents were counterfeit. The seal had been lifted from a public PDF. The clerk name belonged to someone who had retired 2 years earlier. The paper stock did not match anything used by the courthouse. Most damning of all, Mason's cameras captured Diane taping the packet to the door at 5:17 a.m., wearing gardening gloves and carrying the same blue tote she used at board meetings. The investigator pulled printer logs from the clubhouse office. The forged packet had been generated there before sunrise, along with copies stuffed into neighborhood boxes. The same computer also held draft letters threatening liens and internal emails about disqualifying Mason from speaking at the annual meeting. Buried in the vendor records sat another surprise: proposed payments to Diane's brother-in-law for community legal processing, padded so badly it looked like theft wearing a polo shirt. That night the clubhouse filled early because scandal traveled faster than any newsletter Diane had ever sent. She entered with her usual stack of proxies and the fixed smile of someone expecting victory. Mason walked in carrying binders. Avery came behind him. No robe, no theatrics, just calm eyes and a courthouse credential on a lanyard beside 2 county investigators and a deputy. The room changed before anyone sat down. Diane's confidence cracked the instant she recognized the badge and understood whose porch she had chosen. The woman she had tried to bluff out of her home was not just another quiet spouse. She was a sitting county judge who handled civil filings every day and recognized the fake seal at a glance. The investigators laid out the forged documents, the video stills, the printer records, and the vendor trail. Diane's face drained so fast it seemed to pull the color from the whole room. By the time the deputy lifted the blue tote from under her chair and found matching paper inside, the board was no longer protecting her, it was backing away from her. The fallout hit Pine Hollow harder than any storm had. Diane was charged with forgery, harassment, tampering with mail receptacles, and falsifying association records. 2 board members resigned within the week after admitting they had approved fines without reviewing the evidence. The special assessment was frozen. A forensic audit exposed inflated vendor bits, sloppy bookkeeping, and a stream of administrative charges that had somehow circled back to Diane's family network for months. Every violation against Mason and Avery was voided. The lien threats disappeared. The HOA had to pay for the destroyed hydrangeas, repair the irrigation sabotage, and reimburse legal expenses tied to the fraudulent notices. But the deeper change was social. The silence that had protected Diane broke all at once. Neighbors who had kept their heads down began forwarding old emails, screenshots, and camera clips from their own houses. One family produced footage of Diane moving a trash bin into view before photographing it. Another revealed ballots left unsecured in the clubhouse office before prior elections. By the time a court-appointed management company took over interim operations, Pine Hollow looked less like a neat suburban dictatorship and more like a neighborhood waking up from a long embarrassment. Mason never became the loudest man on the street, but he did join the finance committee that replaced Diane's inner circle. Avery kept her professional life private, though nobody in Pine Hollow ever again mistook her quiet for weakness. That fall, the couple replanted hydrangeas along the same survey line, thicker and stronger than before, each one staked against the wind. The fake eviction packet ended up preserved in an evidence sleeve, its red stamp as useless as the fear it was meant to create. In places ruled by petty power, people like Diane count on one thing above all else, that no one will know the rules better than they do. So what should happen when a bully with a printer and a clipboard tries to fake authority at the one house that can expose every lie?